Oh, my name is Kellie Landry, and I'm an alcoholic. And I'm glad to be here today. Can you guys hear me? Oh, good. Okay. I believe that I have three things active in my life to keep me comfortable in my own skin. And those three things are a sobriety date. My sobriety date is... My sobriety date is January 6, 1996. And the second thing is a home group. My home group is the Chicago Foxhall Group. And we meet in Chicago, Illinois on Wednesday at 7 p.m. It's an open speaker meeting, similar to this, not this many people. And it's a structured meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous that's not very structured, that's geared towards young people in Alcoholics Anonymous. That's not really young people's meeting. And all I can tell you about that meeting is that everybody has manners, which is what I looked for in Alcoholics Anonymous for a long time and couldn't find. I couldn't find it in myself, let alone at a meeting. And I'm sure it's probably because I wasn't really looking for it. But my home group today has manners, and that's a big deal. And the third thing is a sponsor, and my sponsor's name is Polly Pistol. And I always say this, but she knows where I am tonight, obviously. But I always say that, and I always say that because for most of my sobriety, I was unaccountable to a sponsor in Alcoholics Anonymous. I just basically sponsored myself, even though I had a sponsor by name. I never really answered to anyone ever for about 23 years, and I'm accountable to my sponsor, and that's a big deal for me, and it has changed my sobriety. So I want to thank Al and Judy for having me. I thought it was a big deal the first time I ever got asked to speak. I got asked to do anything like this. I thought that was like the biggest deal, and what's a bigger deal is that people ask me to do this again. I always think I'm going to go up there and I'm going to do a really bad job and no one's ever going to ask me again. But that hasn't happened, so it's a surprise, and it's a big honor. And it's hard, It's hard to come up here and be honest. And I just hope that I can help somebody in the room today by sharing you my experience, strength, and hope, and that's what I'm going to do. And I want to thank everybody for being so welcoming to Rich and I when we got here. It was just... it's been great, and we've only been here a couple hours, so I'm really looking forward to the rest of the conference. So I have a little while to tell you what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. And I'll start by telling you that I am 26 years old. I got sober when I was 18. So I'm going to tell you what it was like for me that got me to get sober by 18. I grew up in South Florida in Fort Lauderdale. I was only child of a single mom. My mom was a crackhead prostitute. We lived in a trailer park. It was, and I'll just describe it for you. And before I get way into this, I'll just tell you that because of the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, I know today that what happened to me in my childhood doesn't have anything to do with the fact that I suffer from alcoholism. And I didn't know that for a long time, but because of the steps, I know that. So I'm just going to give you my history, but it doesn't have anything to do with me having alcoholism, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. So we lived in this trailer park. It was 3 blocks long and 3 blocks wide. Everybody was white. Everybody was like white trash. It's like the best way I can describe it. Pickup trucks, Confederate flags. I hope I don't offend anybody. Like barefoot women and barefoot pregnant women. And there was a lot of I remember there being a lot of cats, a lot of broken down trailers, a lot of people didn't work. It was white trash, and it was home to me. And this trailer park was surrounded by the projects in Fort Lauderdale. And This trailer park was surrounded by the projects in South Florida, and everybody in those projects were African American. So I went to school in a school next door named Riverland Elementary, and I went to school where almost everybody was black. And it was the first time, going back through my life, it was the first time I can ever remember there being some serious signs of me having alcoholism before I ever picked up a drink or a drug. And what happened to me is I felt uncomfortable at this school. And I don't know what a normal person that doesn't have alcoholism would have done, but what I did is I really wanted to be black because everybody was black, and I wanted to fit in. I was desperate to fit in. And I started telling everybody I was half black or a quarter black or something like that. Now, I had blonde hair and blue eyes. I obviously don't have any black in me. And I don't know if people believe me. I'm sure they didn't. But the scary thing about it is that I believed me. After telling that lie for so long, I really believed that. I wanted to be a quarter black or half black, whatever I was saying. And that is a pattern that, it's changed. But if I was suffering from untreated alcoholism today, it would be the same. It would be the same for me. That was what it was like at school. They beat me up. They called me cracker, poor white trash, trailer girl. There was a lot of violence. In the trailer park, I was like the leader of the pack, kind of bossy, which hasn't changed a lot. And the treehouse was in my backyard. I was calling all the shots. I was doing my best to control the situation outside of the trailer. I peed in my pants until 10 or 11 years old. I didn't want to miss anything. I like to be the last person at the party, the first person there and the last person to leave. I don't want to miss anything. And that started at 4 or 5 years old. What was going on in the trailer was a lot of sexual, emotional, physical abuse. I was the victim. I've done a lot of work on that now, but what I can tell you then is that I felt powerless inside of that trailer. I felt powerless because of what was happening to me. I felt powerless because of what I was seeing my mom do, what I was hearing my mom do, what I was hearing her say. I felt very powerless. So I had to search outside of that trailer to get power. And in the beginning, I got it from lying, pretending to be somebody I wasn't, and then I got it from trying to control and manipulate situations. It hasn't changed much. So that was what it was like for me. A wonderful thing happened to me at about 11 or 12 years old. My mom smoked pot, and I'm going to tell you about my first drink. It wasn't a drink, it was a joint. I know this is an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, and I hope I don't offend anybody else. But my mom had roaches in the ashtray. Everybody knows what those are, like little, maybe not joints, little joints. I don't know. They know? Okay. So my mom would have those in the ashtray, and I would go around and I would collect them during the day, and or during the week I would collect. So the first time I did, I collected all these roaches. I probably had 12 or something like that, 14 maybe. And I unrolled them and I rolled them up in a joint like I had watched her and her friends do. And I was by myself and I smoked this joint by myself. And it was just like you hear anybody else talk about. It was the best thing. All of a sudden, it was okay that I was Kellie Anderson. It was okay that I was white. It was okay that I was not religious. It was okay that I had never been baptized and I was convinced I was going to hell. It was okay what my mom was doing. It was okay we didn't have a kitchen table. We weren't celebrating holidays. I'm sure you guys can relate. Everything was okay. When I put it in my body, it was like, all right. It was magic for me. And similar to what Alcoholics Anonymous and people in this room are able to do to me is what that joint did. And I was hooked, not physically, I'm sure, but I was hooked to the effect produced, and which is what it talks about in the doctor's opinion. It's why I smoked joints after that, and it's why I drank. I drank for the effect produced by alcohol. So just like anyone else, I started with pot, started drinking probably the next weekend. I was, I think I was 12, and I wasn't really a social drinker. I was somebody that took like a couple Budweisers out of the refrigerator and put them in my room. I drank warm Budweiser in the beginning, and that never stopped. I always preferred a warm Budweiser over a cold one. And I just drank. Right after that, I got into, actually it was between 3rd and 4th grade. I was like 9 years old, so this is actually before I started using, but I got into a school that was for people who are accelerated in math. It was called Nova, and at this school they shipped everybody from all over Broward County to go to this school, and at this school everybody was Jewish. So I ran into another problem. That was in like 3rd or 4th grade. By the time I was in 8th grade, I was like half black, a quarter Jewish. I was like totally confused about who I was, and this was all before I found my solution, and which came a few years later. But I was just not happy being me, and I wasn't pretty enough. I wasn't skinny enough. We didn't have enough money. I was embarrassed about my mom. She had a 77 Plymouth Duster. It had no floorboards. It was like the Flintstones car, and with black tinted windows. And I remember I used to get invited to these bar and bat mitzvahs, and I used to get invited to these big parties, and I would have my mom drop me off 3 or 4 blocks away, and I would walk in this fancy dress, and that was one of the things I needed to make amends to my mother for. I was totally filled with pride before I ever picked up. I had so much pride. Everything I had and that was given to me was not enough, even because I did get good things. And I was an only grandchild for 8 years, and my grandparents, the first and only and the oldest, they really took care of me. And anything I really wanted or needed for, I got in the summertime. I flew to Chicago in the summer, and my grandparents took care of me for 3 months. And, they had no idea of what was going on and what was happening to me in Florida. And you know what? I never told anyone. I never asked for help. I never made a plea to get out of the situation I was in. I was full of pride and full of arrogance and self-righteousness. I can take care of this. I'm going to be okay. And then as soon as I got drugs and alcohol off, I was off to the races. And so that was 12 when I started partying. I got sober at 18. I can tell you some facts about what happened in those 6 years. I did everything I could. Whatever you had, I would do. I tried everything that was put in front of me. And right after I turned 13, I turned 13 in May. That summer was the last summer I went away to stay with my grandparents. When I got home, my mom picked me up from the airport in this old 77 Plymouth Duster, and she said to me, "We moved." And I thought, okay, because we had moved a lot. And when we got there, we were living in this little house in Fort Lauderdale, in the middle of it was on Sistrunk and Martin Luther King Drive, in a horrible neighborhood in Fort Lauderdale. And it was a little house, and it had 3 bedrooms, and it was split up into 3 efficiencies. They were tiny. And I was in a room, efficiency number 3, and it was 8 by 10. And it had mildew carpeting on the floor, a single-size mattress with no sheets or blankets on it, no pillow, a college-size refrigerator, a tiny little sink, a small bathroom with a stand-up shower. And in Florida, the houses are up on blocks, bricks, because there's a lot of flooding. And the floor was rotted out in the bathroom, and you had to balance yourself to go to the bathroom. And I remember my mom unlocking the door, the deadbolt to this little room that was going to eventually cost me $90 a week, and going in there and thinking to myself, this is great. I can live in this room and lock my mom out so she can't come in and go through my stuff. And, about 2 minutes into the situation, my mom said, "I'll try to stay out of your way in here." And we were going to be living in that 8 by 10 room together. And it didn't last long before I left. I stayed with friends. When you're in a situation like I'm in, you can really play it out. You can really get your girlfriend's parents to take care of you. But I was a troublemaker. I was a bad girl already at 13 years old. People's parents didn't want to take me in. And now I look back, I didn't want help. I was the big victim when I got here, and now I have a different understanding of what it was like for me. But it was horrible. So I lived in that efficiency. My mom I moved back in. She moved out. She moved into the first efficiency number 1. I lived in number 3. It was $90 a week. I did whatever I could to I did whatever I could to pay the $90 a week, and most of you know what that is. I'm not proud. I'm very ashamed of what I did, but I had to do it, and I realize it's a part of who makes me who I am today. Those 4 years or 6 years that I partied hard, I never once in the big book. I love the big book, and it says his alcoholic life is the only normal one. And to me, it was a normal life. I didn't once think I might have a drug or alcohol problem. I didn't once think I need to get out of this situation. Maybe I should ask for help. Maybe real families aren't living like this. I thought it was a normal way to live, and I liked the way I was living. I started getting in trouble at 14. I went to jail for the first time for a felony. I had 5 felonies before I was 18. I spent almost from my 16th to my 17th birthday in the juvenile penitentiary. I'm not a real criminal. I just want you guys to know that they were all like possession of cannabis. I was just not real fast. So like when the cops were coming, I was like not able to like get out of there as fast as other people. So I always went to jail. But and then they take you to jail, and if you're a minor and they can't find your parents, they let you out on your own recognizance, which I thought meant you didn't have to go back to the court date. Well, that's a felony too, if you have a lot of those. So I was always getting in trouble. I wasn't very smart. So I dropped out of school freshman year. I thought I had learned enough there already. I have journals that I started writing at 12, 13, 14 years old, and I literally wrote in there that I thought I learned enough at school. It wasn't about not having the clothes or the it wasn't about not being able to get there. It was about really thinking that I was so smart that I didn't need to go to high school. Just so much pride and arrogance. And a wonderful thing happened to me. I hadn't seen my mom in 8 months. It was in 1994. The last time I ran into her was in a crack house. I ended up actually becoming what my mom was. By the time I was 17, I was the person I hated the most. I was doing exactly what she was doing, drug-wise, for a living, everything. And I ended up running into her, and I didn't see her for 8 months after that. And I remember a couple times in those 8 months thinking that maybe she was dead. Maybe I was even happy about that. And on December 23rd, 1994, I drank a bottle of Southern Comfort. And I was drinking pretty heavily at this time, but drugs were still my number one priority. And I fell down and I broke my nose on Mexican tile floor. And I don't remember doing it. I remember being thrown in a pool in late December in Florida, being cold, having sweatpants on, trying to get them off. And I remember, that's the last thing I remember. I guess what happened is, while I was trying to get the sweatpants off, I fell down, I smacked my face on Mexican tile floor. I remember waking up in the morning and just my face being huge and looking in the mirror and being like, I'm not the elephant woman. I was just like, I looked deformed, and I was washed out. I hadn't seen anyone in my family for years. My mom, like I said, was 8 months. I didn't have a place to live. I had lost that $90 a week efficiency. I didn't have anything except for 2 book bags. One of the book bags had 2 photo albums in it. The other one had a couple sundresses, a couple pair of broken sandals. I was broke down and beat down, and now my face was looking bad, and I was sure that the guy that I was shacking up with here at his house for the last couple of days wasn't really going to want me around with this face. And I remember going with him to the beach and sitting on the beach, commercial beach. My husband and I were just there on the pier and looking out over the ocean. It's so dramatic, but it's what happened. And thinking like you're gonna die. And I just heard it. I never had those feelings before. I was suicidal my whole life. At 5 years old, I tried to kill myself for the first time by jumping off the trailer. But a lot of those suicidal thoughts stopped when I started using drugs and alcohol. I believe that drugs and alcohol, in a way, saved my life. It saved me from being a teenage suicide. I just had this feeling that I was dying, this thought or feeling. I don't know where it came from. I don't know why it came, but it told me, call your grandparents in Chicago and tell them you want help. So this was on now Christmas Eve of 1994, and I called them and I said, I'm in Florida. I haven't seen my mom in 8 months. I know you really don't understand the situation and the condition of what's going on down here, but I need help. If you fly me up there, I'll go into treatment or something, which I had never met anyone that went into treatment or anything. And they said okay. And on January 12th, 1995, I got on an airplane and I flew to Chicago. And so I've been there almost 9 years. And I remember my friends taking me to the airport. There was like 4 or 5 carloads of my friends. Everybody was trashed. The night before, my friends and I played this game called Kill the Schlager. We only played it once a year, and we did it only for a big deal. Everybody would get a bottle of Goldschlager, a big bottle, and we would try to kill it. I never could, but they played it for me, which was a big deal. And the next morning, everybody was hungover. I remember going to the airport, saying goodbye to everyone, thinking that I would really never see them again, maybe a little bit hoping I would never see them again. And I remember getting on the airplane and drinking Bloody Marys all the way there in first class. I didn't have a first class ticket. I wasn't old enough to drink. I was 17. I made it there. When I got there, I was passed out, and they couldn't wake me up, and they had to wheel me off the airplane. And they wheeled me off the airplane, and my mom was there to pick me up. And my mom had been there about 7 or 8 months, and my mom was about 4.5 months pregnant, and she was 45. And she was fat. I always say that because when you grew up with a crackhead for a mom, they're not fat. And she was fat, and I can remember saying that. Or she was heavy, I should say that. She'd probably appreciate that. She was heavy, and she had a little bit of a sparkle in her eye, and I remember thinking that something had changed about my mom. And she picked me up. I went right into Elmhurst Hospital. It's a hospital. I did not go to detox. I went to the regular hospital. I'll tell you the condition that I was when I got there from that airport. I had long dreadlocks with bugs in them. I had a bladder, kidney, and urinary tract infection. I was malnourished and dehydrated. And I had a sexually transmitted disease called scabies from head to toe, which are like body lice. So I was itching. So I had scabs all over me. And I was 94 pounds, and I was dying. I was right. That thought and feeling that I had 2.5 weeks before sitting on that beach was accurate. I didn't have a long time. I had done damage at 17 years old to my liver and kidneys, and I was spiritually wiped out. And in Bill's story, he says, I remember hearing them say to my mother and my grandmother, she could die. Like if she doesn't stop the behavior, she could die. And in Bill's story, he says, I knew and almost welcomed the idea. And I remember laying there knowing and almost welcoming the idea that I was going to die because I was just done. And when you don't have any self-esteem and any self-worth and you're that sick, I mean, my thought was, why even go on? And I remember them telling me that you can't do drugs anymore. And I heard that loud and clear. But I figured alcohol wasn't a drug. And I'm going to tell you about the last 11 months of my using. That was late January 1995, and I got sober January 6, 1996. I'm so grateful for those 11 months. Those 11 months I drank alcoholically. Had I not had those 11 months, I might not be here with you guys tonight. You might have a different speaker. I might not have been able to get sober in another 12-step program. I drank alcoholically. I drank Budweiser and Southern Comfort on the rocks. I drank every day. I drank every day in a blackout. I lived in a small, tiny one-bedroom apartment with my mom in Villa Park. She had my brother in May. My brother was born with Down syndrome and autism and hearing impaired. And she couldn't deal with it. So she put him in his crib and she went back to smoking crack and drinking boxed wine. So here I was, I was just about to turn 18 when he was born, and I had this little brother in this crib, and I would wake up with these horrific hangovers. I would think about throwing him out the window, suffocating him, throwing him off the balcony. My thinking was absolutely out of control. When I did not have alcohol into my system, my thinking was like rapid wildfire. It was like I couldn't even catch on to one of the thoughts that were going by. They were going by so fast, and just thoughts that don't make any sense to anyone. Thoughts that I thought I would never be able to. I thought I would never be able to tell anyone. I thought about suffocating my brother. I was ashamed and humiliated of those thoughts, but those are the kind of thoughts that I had. Suicidal and homicidal thoughts all the time. So my drinking in those last 11 months was horrible. I drank as much as I could. I got waitress jobs because I couldn't read or write. You could just write like over easy OE. It was very easy to be a waitress when you couldn't read and write. And I just worked and I drank. I drank in Villa Park in sports bars, and I took men home that were 3 times my age. Some of them had no teeth. Those were the kind of people that I were hanging out with. I was bringing them back to my mom's house where there was an infant who needed 24-hour-a-day supervision who wasn't getting it, who I would change his diaper, and it would be like 5 or 6 days old, the diaper he was wearing. And about in June of that summer, when my brother was about a month, I was in a bar, and I guess there was a guy there, and he was driving from Colorado, I think, to Tybee Island, Georgia. And I think I said I wanted to go with him because I woke up there like 2 days later. I don't remember the trip from Chicago to Tybee Island at all, nothing. I lived there on that island with him for 2.5, 3 months till Labor Day weekend of 1995. I drank every day. It was the worst. It was my bottom. There was a bar on every corner, no grocery store, no gas stations, no mailboxes. Everybody rode bikes, even though there was actual roads. It was where I had my bottom. It was a wonderful place. I had a fake ID, even though I was 18 now. I didn't even really know this guy, and I'm sure there's women in here that can relate to that, and I lived with him. Eventually, around Labor Day weekend, he did ask me to leave. I wasn't very fun to be around. I was always trying to drown myself and stuff. And he would have to like come into the bathroom and pull me up by my hair. I was a little bit obsessed with wanting to die, but I did come back. I came back in September, Labor Day weekend of 1995. I moved back in with my mom. I got a job at a place called the Copper Kitchen. I had one real bad, I was drinking every day, slicing my arms now. I started slicing them, going into Elmhurst Hospital once, maybe twice, maybe 3 times a week. Sometimes I would go a couple of weeks without going in the hospital. They would put me in a 24 to 72-hour watch. I was obsessed with trying to kill myself. I would cut myself all over my arms, walk into my mom's house and say, "Look what you did to me." I was the biggest victim you've ever met. And I took no responsibility for my actions, absolutely none. And so I was working at this restaurant. I had one really, really bad drunk in October on Halloween weekend. I was the kind of drinker that started drinking on Thursday. I worked Monday through Thursday, so Thursday through Monday I drank. I pretty much stayed out. There's bars in Chicago and Manheim that are open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, so I would just go there. And my blackouts started to getting really bad. And in the beginning, I didn't have real bad blackouts, and I couldn't really understand when girlfriends of mine or people that I would be drinking with couldn't remember. But in the end, I started having these brutal blackouts, and I would wake up like with other people's clothes on and in other places. But the scariest one was this after October 31st, Halloween weekend. I woke up in somebody else's sweatpants. I was home. I didn't know how I got there. The outfit I was wearing and my purse were nowhere to be found. And somebody called on the phone, and it was this creepy guy from the neighborhood who my mom used to, sleep with. And, he said something like, "I have your stuff." And I just remember thinking, like, I'm done. I went to work the next day. There was a girl named Heather in the restaurant that I worked in, and she was sitting with an older gentleman in a booth. She looked great. She looked fabulous. I used to see her in all the bars, and she would do crazy, stupid stuff like I would do. And she looked great, and she was talking about how great her life was, and she said something about the 12 steps. And excuse me, I had never heard of the 12 steps. Nobody I ever know got sober. I never heard of anybody from the trailer park. People didn't go away to like Hazleton. They didn't go away at all. And so I didn't know what she was talking about. That night I went to Borders bookstore. I bought a book called Dumping Your Hang-Ups Without Dumping Them on Others. And it was a 12-step to getting rid of all your problems book. And I went home that night in this single bed, with my brother in the room, and I read these steps, and I got through like the first 6 or 7 steps that night, and I thought I was on my way. The book gave me a lot of hope. It was the first time I even addressed that maybe I had a problem, and that was in probably the beginning of November, and on January 17th, 1995. I was working at a restaurant. I was working at the same restaurant that I'd been working at since Labor Day weekend, and AA members would come into this restaurant, and the waitresses would say, "Here come those AAs," and we would all be like, "Ooh," nobody ever wanted to wait on the AA members, in case you didn't know that, and I don't know why. But they didn't, and because I'm a chameleon, I would say, "Oh," and I would pretend like I knew what an AA was, but I didn't know what an AA was. Towards the end, after they started coming in for a while, they would ask for me to be their waitress, and I don't know why. Maybe it was because I was like 90 pounds. I had a blue uniform on that was 3 or 4 sizes too big. I always smelled like Southern Comfort. I had a flask of it in my pocket. I could not read. I could barely talk. I always said the wrong words at the wrong time, which I still do a lot. And they would ask for me. And I would never admit this to them or to those other waitresses, but I enjoyed waiting on them. They were great. They were you guys, and they were young and old and gay and straight and male and female, and they were people that normally would not mix. I was certain that I wasn't going to mix with them. I still didn't know what they were a part of. There was a guy that always sat at the head of the table, and his name was Eugene. And he was like 12 years sober, and he was like really old. And he used to say, "Kellie, you're going to die before you're 21." And I'd be like, "Great, good, bring it on." And he took an action that I will never be able to even the score. He came in on January 17th, 1995, at 8 o'clock, 5 minutes to 8, when my shift was over at 8, and he tricked me. He brought 2 of the cutest newly sober guys I have ever seen in my life. I mean, like, I was 18 years old. I still haven't seen anybody like these guys. I'm serious. And they were like, they sat down. I sat down with them. I used to sit down with them and smoke all the time, I was just out of it. And, they were like, "Do you want to go to an AA meeting with us?" And I was like, "AA, BA, I'll go anywhere with you, BB. I would have went anywhere they were going that night. That's the truth. I didn't know where I was going or where they were taking me, but I know I was going. If those guys were going, I was going to be there, And so, yes, I followed men into Alcoholics Anonymous, but it was I got sober at an AA club. It was called the Nona Center East. It was in Villa Park, Villa Avenue. It was in between VP Sports Bar and Friends and Company, which are the 2 bars I drank at. Nona Center East was right in the middle, and I never knew it was there. I went to my first meeting. It was 12 to 15 men. All of them were much older than me. They took me in the back room. They had what is called a first step meeting for me. We don't have many of them in the city of Chicago, but in the suburb, if it's somebody's first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, they bring them back and they give them a first step meeting. And they bought me a big book. I still have it and use it. And they sat around the room and they went around the table, and I spoke last, and they talked about alcoholism, and they talked about what their life was like and what it was like now. And to tell you the honest to God truth, I don't remember a lot. I don't remember if I could even identify with what they were saying about losing things. I had never had a DUI. I had never lost anything as far as I was concerned because of drinking. I never tried to control my drinking as far as I was concerned at that time. I just knew that I was beat down, and I was there because of those guys. Luckily, these people in this meeting said, I remember them saying 2 things. We're going to love you until you learn to love yourself, And it was a long time since I had heard anybody say anything like that. And it really was important for me to hear that at the time. And the other thing was keep coming back, which I did. I came back for 2 weeks. I came back every day for 2 weeks to the 8 o'clock meeting, and every day I came back drunk. I'm never rude to a drunk person in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. I know that I had to be drunk to get there for those 2 weeks. And I know because, A, that's what happened, and I've been sober since then. And I know because I was so messed up and screwed up and just saturated that I missed it, and I'll explain that to you. I continued drinking. I drank at Friends and Company, and then I would go to the 8 o'clock meeting, and then I would go to VP Sports Bar, and I would come into the meeting after having a few drinks and being like, hey, you know, and everybody was like, hi. They were really super nice. But, which is probably why I kept coming back, because the people in the bars weren't that nice to me anymore. But on January 5th, 1996, I heard a speaker called Pontiac Joe speak. It was a Saturday night meeting. It was they had a steak the first Saturday of every month at this place I got sober, steak night, where they had food and then a speaker after that. And he was speaking, and I could swear he was talking to me, like dead at me. And I'm sure he wasn't. It was a big meeting. I'm just really self-centered. But he said a couple things that changed my life. He said, the first thing he said is, this program really works good. And I think I was drunk. But he said, this program really works good. And then he said, it works a lot better if you don't drink. And I remember being like, oh my God, like, nobody's drinking here. Like, I was just like, I mean, I had no idea. And I can remember, like, these ladies that didn't like me at all. They were like, finally, she got it, you know, like, I couldn't believe it. I could not believe that was what was going on in these meetings that I had been going to for 2 weeks. I couldn't believe it. So I went home, and, you know, he said another thing. He said, when you get home, put your keys under your bed and say thank you. And in the morning, at night, before you go to bed, and in the morning you take your keys out from under your bed and you say please. And he said that was how you begin a relationship with God. And he went on to say that God is how we stay sober. And because I was listening, after he got my attention that this program was about not drinking, I was going to find out what you guys were up to, you know. And I did that, and I haven't had a drink since. And, you know, I used to lie. Well, it was a big problem of mine. But I used to say a lot from behind the podium, and I've prayed every day since then, and I haven't had a drink. And that's not true. There's been mornings, there's been days when I've been so mad at God, I've refused to pray. There's been days I forgot. But every day since then, I have been active in this program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And every day I've taken actions in Alcoholics Anonymous that didn't make any sense to me, you know, that I didn't want to take. Making my bed and brushing my teeth, which sometimes I still have to be reminded of, they don't make any sense to me, and I don't really understand how they've helped me to achieve such a wonderful life and good sobriety, but they have. And that's what I've done. I only have a little bit longer, and I just want to tell you what has happened to me since January 6, 1996, and I'm not feeling good, and I'm going to do my best to keep talking here, but I will tell you that I'm going to try not to cry the whole time I'm up here. I went to a meeting on Thursday night, and at this meeting, it's called the California Group. Their format is they call people up and they ask them how AA is working in their life, and you get to share for like 2 or 3 minutes. And I was thinking that day, like, if I got up and I was to talk about how AA is working in my life, like, I was thinking about what I was going to say when I got called up. That's how self-centered I am. But I was thinking what I was going to say is, like, the way it's working in my life is that I have more gratitude today alongside with more fear today than I've ever experienced in my life. I don't know how you can have gratitude and fear at the same time, but if you can, I have them both. And I'll tell you why. You know, my early sobriety, it wasn't easy for me. My mom was still smoking crack and drinking box wine. My brother was, he was about 6 and a half, 7 months old when I got sober. I got sober going to these meetings. I would bring him with me. Everybody smoked. It was when everybody still smoked in meetings. And I would bring him with me on my lap, and everybody would say he was my kid, which he's not. And it was horrible. I would go home. My mom would blow crack smoke at me, throw wine in my face, tell me I was never going to make it. And I was crazy. I didn't get a sponsor. I got a sponsor by name, but I didn't start taking any actions. I lied. I told everybody I was 21 when I came into the program. Nobody knew my age because I was afraid. If I told you guys I was 18, I wouldn't be allowed here, because it's AA. Don't you have to be 21 to be an alcoholic? And so I lied to everybody. I didn't tell anyone what was going on for me living with my mom. So I would go to these meetings and I would just talk in these meetings, just a bunch of crap. Nothing was true. I wasn't asking anybody for help. I wasn't telling them what was going on at home. I was trying to work, and I was shaking all the time. I spilled a couple bowls of hot soup on two clients, actually, 2 days in a row, and I got fired and lost my job. So now I wasn't working. I was just hanging out at this club, and I was taking the same actions that I was taking before I got sober. I was still taking them in Alcoholics Anonymous. I was not getting any better. The only thing that was different was that and I didn't know this then, but I know it now, on January 6th, the desire to drink was gone. And it's one of those phenomenons that I can't explain it. I was the person that would drink all night, wake up in the morning, look at myself in the mirror. I would have things like new tattoos that I don't remember getting, bruises that I don't remember getting. I would look at myself in the mirror and I would say, I'm not going to drink today. I don't want to drink today. I would take a shower, 5-10 minute shower. By the time I was out of the shower, I was, getting my clothes on as fast as I could to walk across the tracks and get a bottle of Southern Comfort or Amaretto, whatever I could afford. So that was what my life was like every day. And all of a sudden on January 6th, I didn't even have the desire to do that. I really have not had a strong desire to use or drink in almost 8 years. And there is no way to explain that except for that God came into my life. Not came in, I'm sure he was already there, but he took it away. I did everything wrong except for I did not drink. Everything that I could do wrong. Everybody was older than me. When I was 34 days sober, I met a group of young people. I got involved in young people's service work. I started doing work on young people's conferences. I was an alternate GSR for 2 years, and then a GSR for 2 years, and eventually I was a DCM for 2 years in my district, and I started working up in service. I even got a service sponsor. I studied the 12 traditions, but as far as the steps were concerned, I didn't want to have anything to do with them. For almost 2.5 years, I just did not want to have anything to do with them. And at 2.5 years sober, I got a sponsor. Her name was Marina. She sat me down, and I said, before you start working with me, I want to let you know that I don't know if I'm an alcoholic. I'm 21 years old. I like this life better than I like my other one, but I don't know if I have alcoholism, and I'm scared to tell anybody that. And she said, well, you know what? I'm going to take you through this big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and we're going to start at the beginning, and we're going to read the preface and the forewords and the doctor's opinion, and we're going to read every single chapter, and we're going to read them word for word, line to line. And, you can't read? I'm going to read them to you. And I'm going to let you diagnose yourself with alcoholism. Because if you don't have it, you're free to go. Because this program isn't for people who are drug addicts or have mental problems. This program is for people that suffer from alcoholism. Alcoholism, do you have it? And I didn't know. So she took me through the book. It took a long time, maybe 6, 7, 8 months to go through the first step in the big book. And by the time I got to the end of the chapter, more about alcoholism, where it talks about needing a higher power greater than yourself, or you're dead. You will drink again. We have no defense against the first drink. I was scared. I knew I had it. It's a scary feeling to go through the book word for word and realize what it's saying about alcoholism and know that I have a mental and a physical disease. I have a physical allergy and a mental obsession that keeps going and going. I was so afraid. I was so afraid when it talks about that there could be a time where I won't remember the suffering and humiliation of even a week or month ago. That really I'm without defense. I don't just not pick up every day, because according to the big book, I could again. Like, I could go through a period where I can't remember the suffering and humiliation of a week or a month ago unless I have a good relationship with my higher power. According to the Big Book, I have a daily reprieve. And she was reading all this to me, and I was reading it. She would read it to me, and then I had like 6 sponsees at the time that I would go home and I would read the chapter. She would read the chapter to me, and I would go home and I would read the chapter to them. And I was learning this material, and I was getting more afraid and more afraid and more afraid. And I went on to the second step, and I went on to the third step, and I did work about God. I'm only 8 years sober. I've done minimal work, but what I know is that I realize that it's my responsibility to connect to a higher power. It's my responsibility to connect to a power greater than myself, and it's my responsibility to know the actions that I have to take daily to connect to that higher power. I heard a speaker that talks about it's like we're unplugged, and everybody else is like plugged in to God, and we were just born unplugged. And my job every day is to plug back in. And some mornings today I wake up already plugged in, but sometimes I don't. Sometimes something happens in the middle of the day and I get unplugged, and it's my responsibility to plug back in. And I took the steps really seriously from then on, like about 2.5 years sober. Polly started sponsoring me about 2 years ago. I didn't know this until she started sponsoring me, but I don't think I was 5 years sober when she started sponsoring me, 5.5, something like that. And I don't think I was ever honest with anyone ever in my life until I met her. I heard her speak at a convention about 6 months before. I called her up, and she was living in L.A. She gave me 45 minutes of her time. Everybody said, "Don't call a circuit speaker." And I said, well, I just have to call this woman. I heard her speak, and her son lives in town, and she has a nephew who's hearing impaired, and she's done all this work, and I need to call her. I just knew that I needed to call her, and I called her. And, for somebody who everybody said was going to be really busy and wasn't going to have any time for me, she gave me 45 minutes that day on the phone. And I was in a lot of pain. I was newly married. I was feeling like at 5 years sober I was falling apart. And because I wasn't being honest. And I didn't know it at the time, but I had a sponsor who thought I was a real good AA member. She thought I was really good in service, that I really sponsored a lot of women, that I was a good sponsor, I was a good home group member. She thought I was a good AA member. So what I wanted to do was keep her thinking I was a good AA member. So when I would have a bad thought or do something bad, I wouldn't tell her the truth. And with Polly being so far away, it's easy for me to just blurt out the truth to her over the phone, like, listen to what I did. Because what I get from my sponsor today is love, 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 love. And there's no judgment from her. And that's what I need to stay sober. That's what I need to keep being honest. So the last thing I want to talk about is just 2 quick things. So I got my GED when I was about 3 years sober. I learned to read. The first thing I ever learned to read was How It Works. People in Alcoholics Anonymous took time out of their lives and of their days to teach me how to read. I started going to community college. People would come over. They would help me with college. They would check my papers. I ended up getting straight A's. And it's easy to get straight A's in college if you do it like you do AA, if you come early and you sit in the front and you raise your hand and you ask stupid questions. It's really easy. That's what I did, and I got straight A's. And I worked at this job. I got a job when I was a couple months sober, and I ended up staying there. And I got laid off November 6th of last year. And it was devastating. I was making a lot of money, more money than anybody in my family, anybody had ever made. It was a lot of money for me. It was a lot of money for a person with a GED, and I got laid off. They downsized. They cut like 24 out of the 26 people in my department, and I was devastated. And luckily at the time I was working at this place part-time doing sales, and I was working there because somebody in the program said to me, would you like to do sales? And I said, well, I do accounting. Like, I'm a bean counter. I work by myself. I don't want to do sales. And I don't want to sell what you guys have to offer, because that means I'm going to have to go into these big law firms and, use big words. And I'm dumb, because I have an old idea that I'm dumb, because I was in the retarded classes. And I remember I talked to Polly. Polly said, you should really take that job. A couple people said you should take that job. And I told this guy, I'll think about it for 2 weeks and I'll let you know. So on my way to work, after about 2 weeks, I called Polly and I said, I need your help. And she said, what's up? And I said, I want to call this guy and tell him that I don't want to take that job, part-time doing sales. And she said, oh, you're going to take it. And she said, that will be good for you. And, the guy that asked me said, you can sell Alcoholics Anonymous better than anybody I know. If you can sell Alcoholics Anonymous, you can sell my business. And he was right. I mean, not about selling Alcoholics Anonymous, but about selling his business. I did great, and I loved it. I loved doing sales. I loved being there. I loved the people I was working with. I wasn't making any money, and there was this feeling in my heart that said, like, this is the right place for you. So when I got laid off, I got a lot of other job offers, and I'm still getting them almost a year later from the industry I was in, and these people basically offered me a job there. In the middle of November of last year, the company was really struggling. And they said, if you come on and you work full-time and we get out of this mess, we will make you a partner. And I said, okay. And my husband said, we will downsize, we will get rid of one of our cars, we'll move into a smaller apartment. If you feel like you need to work here for some reason, I'm gonna support you in working here. And that's just the way he is. He's great. And in March 3rd, 2003, the owner of the company decided that he was going to step away. And I remember the day, it was Black Monday. That's what I call it. It was a Monday. And it looked like there was 25 employees and everybody was going to lose their job. And my husband wasn't working at the time. He was actually working for this company, part-time driving. And it's a courier company. And I remember thinking, like, it hasn't been that long for me since I've been in the unemployment line. So it's not going to be that bad to be in unemployment line tomorrow. But if I was to run into one of these people that work here in the unemployment line, like, that would really stink. Because they had families and kids and they needed their paycheck. And I talked to my husband, and this guy basically that owned the company, he said, if you guys get like $5,000 together or something like that, right, he was like, you guys could buy this company. And if you ran it right and didn't make the mistakes we've made in the 10 years, this is a profitable business. And Rich and I talked about it, and I don't know what happened, but we were just like, let's do it. And we talked to some people in the program. Actually, all of the people we talked to are in this room right now. And it's funny, but the closest people to us, my husband and I, are in this room. And the person said, go ahead and do it. Do it. And he helped us, and everybody has helped us. And on March 17th, 2003, I became a 25-year-old business owner. And it's like 6 or 7 months. My husband and I have been partners in this business, and I just want you to know that, like, I have been through a lot in my sobriety. You know, in 8 years, having your whole adult life, you've been through a lot. I lost both of my grandparents. My mom had a heart attack. My mom got sober. And since I've been sober, she's also relapsed since I've been sober. I've watched my brother, who's 8 now, grow up and have a lot of problems with his Downs and his autism. I've been through a lot. I got married at 5 years sober to my best friend. I had, a big wedding with a big white dress. I wanted to get married in a courthouse because that's what I thought I was, that I deserved. And my sponsor said, you are going to have a big wedding. And I did. I had a big wedding. I've been through a lot, but I said this to Rich, I think, the other day. It seems like I've never really been really beat down. Like, you go to the people, meetings with people, and I thought I had. I mean, I had a bankruptcy. I've lost jobs. I got a $30,000 car stolen by a newcomer when I was 4 years sober, and I didn't have any insurance. I had no insurance because you don't need car insurance. And I mean, it like ruined my credit. It was horrible. I mean, I had always thought that I had been beat down, but I go to meetings with people who really have humility and stuff like that, and I don't think I've been beat down. And with this business, I'm getting a butt kick. I mean, I'm getting my butt kicked. And I'll just say real fast that we have because my husband and I believe in the Constitution or the principle of sponsorship. We have business coaches. We have people who that's their job, is to coach us in this business. They're like sponsors. We're accountable to them. And I'm beat down with them every time. I am beat down. I'm humbled. I'm humiliated. I don't know how to run a business. For the first couple months, I'm like, I'm a 25-year-old business owner. Look at my new shoes. You know, like, I was like, had no idea what I was doing. No idea. And, you know, my sponsor told me the other day on the phone, it's a surprise that I didn't drink earlier this year. And really, earlier this year, I took actions that almost destroyed my marriage, that almost destroyed this business, actions that I'm not willing to talk about yet from behind the podium, actions that I hope I never have to repeat again. I hope that someday I can help people to avoid them taking the actions that I took, humiliating, just bad actions because of my pride and arrogance and just self-centeredness. And God is good, and this is what I'm going to end with. Because this is really all I can say on Rich and I separated because of my actions. And in April, I went to see Polly and Dave with a couple sponsees of mine in California. And when I was out there, they weren't very nice to me about how my behavior was. They were nice to me, hospitable. Mr. Pistol was. And he told me he would give me $5 for every time I called him Mr. Pistol up here. $5. And something about going and seeing them and realizing that, like, God has given me this husband that is crazy about me, and this awesome life, and this business, and all these sponsees, and this perfect home group, and my mom is sober, and my brother is healthy, and my mom walked me down the aisle, and she's a homeowner and a school bus driver. I mean, I have an awesome life. And they made me see when I went out there that I have this awesome life, and I've just been tearing it down, like, because I have alcoholism, and I've just been tearing it down. And Rich and I reconciled for like a weekend. Is that what you could call it? Yeah, for a night. It was just like one of those things, you know. And like about 5 or 6 weeks later, 7 weeks later, we went to an AA move. Our home group was doing an AA move. We're really active in our home group, and we happened to be together that day. He happened to give me a ride home. We were living together, and he was living on the couch, and I took a pregnancy test, and I didn't tell him. I wasn't feeling very good. I was a little emotional, like this, and I got to make a call that day. It was May 31st of this year, and I called my mom and I said, Mom, sit down. And she said, good sit down or bad sit down? Because we always say sit down to each other whenever we have good or bad news. And I said, good sit down. And I got to say to my mom, who's alive and well, you're going to be a grandmother. And I'm not sure why God continues to give me these blessings, even when I'm a bad girl. And I don't really know. All I know is that I don't know anything. I know that. That's about all I know. All I know is that all I hope for myself is that I'm not willing to give all this up anymore because of my character defects. Like, I was willing to trade in the farm because I was going through a bad time, and I'm going to be a mom. I have to stop now talking. They're going to come and drag me off here pretty soon, but I'll have the rest of the weekend to talk to you. I'm more afraid, yeah, literally. So just know that I'm going to talk to you. I'm more afraid than I've ever been. I'm afraid to be a mom. I didn't have a very good mom. I didn't have a very good role model. I don't know what I'm doing. I've had a horrible pregnancy. I thought it was going to be awesome and easy, and I was going to be like doing yoga, and I was going to be this fabulous pregnant woman, and I have just been miserable for 6 months. I thought I was going to be able to be a good mom, and now I just realized that, like, I thought I was going to be able to be a good business owner, and I can't do this. And I'll end with telling you that Thursday was boss's day, and on Wednesday I sent myself flowers and my husband flowers and our office manager flowers because I figured I was a bad boss and I wasn't going to give any, so I better get any, so I better send myself some. And so I did. I sent myself flowers, and boss's day came and the flowers came, and me and Rich and I and Cynthia, our office manager, all had flowers. And I just think I'm such a bad boss because I'm so beat down in this area of my life. Like, I have these 25 people who call Rich and I owners, that call us boss, and I just feel like I've done a bad job. And because of this program, like, that day I got cookies and cards from these employees. I got cards that said, "You're a great boss," you know? So I just know that, like, I'm taking direction right now on how to be a good boss and how to be a good owner and how to be a good partner in this business. And as a result of doing that for only like two and a half months I've been working with these coaches, already my employees are seeing a difference. Like, already they're saying to me, "You're a good boss, keep up the good work." So the only thing I keep telling myself about this fear about having this baby is that I'm going to be sponsored. You know, my sponsor is a mom, and she's an awesome grandmother. And I'm going to ask for help, and I'm going to take directions. And I don't want to screw it up. And I have a feeling that if I stay in rooms like this and I talk to people like you, that I'll be okay. So thank you for listening to me. I appreciate it.